for Thursday, November 18th, 2021. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comments?
I have done it.
Okay. Meeting minute review.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Was there an opposed?
I think there was Jeff saying aye in the
Okay,
affirmative.
I'm sorry.
Just a little
Okay.
bit, I think.
Updates, legislation and legal matters.
Good morning. Amy Murdoch, Planning Director. I have a few legal updates and miscellaneous staff items. Number one, just to let everyone know, Sharon and I and Todd Mon have processed a public service waiver for phase 1 of the Terrapin Nature Park Ranger Center. There will be a Ranger Center, a pavilion area, and 2 restrooms, women and men's restroom. The next phase will consist of a trail addition and expansion of the parking lot. There are some critical area snags with that phase of the development, but that will be coming on the heels of this project. So when you see that going up in the next couple of months, just know that that was a part of public service waiver.
Permanent structures.
Permanent structures. Yep. Also, we have received an appeal. So, Rob, if you
Yes.
want to give them an
Yes.
update on that.
So Land Bridge, everybody, Blachek's place, we'll remember that. The Bay City Property Owners Association has filed an appeal with the county for the Board of Appeals to appeal the preliminary decision by this board. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention. A letter was sent out to the applicant on November 17th to notify them that that appeal's been filed.
And then general staff matters, I'll just update you on a few items that we're working on with MACO, which is the Maryland Association of County Governments. Kind of timely, just to let you know that most counties in the state are grappling with some of the very same issues that we are. I've been placed on a work group to look at adaptive reuse of vacant commercial properties. So I think that that study is very timely because that certainly is an issue that we've identified in our comprehensive plan. Hopefully the work group and my involvement in it will bring us some good ideas so that when it's time to update our zoning code, that we have some well-informed strategies and provisions that are tried and true that we're looking at through other jurisdictions. Also to let you know that I'll be sitting on a panel at the winter conference. This is on the first day of the conference on Wednesday, December 8th. I will be representing one of 2 counties in a panel discussion of a session called Not Your Grandfather's Farm, Tapping into Agritourism. This is something that a lot of counties are struggling with, finding the right fit for agritourism uses that branch into some commercial component, and how does that fit into the community and the ag community and into zoning. So there'll be representatives from the Farm Bureau, Grow and Fortify, which is an organization that advocates and assists agritourism industries to grow, and a planner from Worcester County as well. So. And Stephanie has an update.
Stephanie Jones, Long Range Principal Planner. I just have some updates for the comp plan. December 13th is the date that public comment session will close. So, keep that in mind if anyone ever asks you. Just as a heads up, in January, there will be a joint meeting for the Planning Commission and the County Commissioners, January 11th. So if you want to mark that date down, and I'll send out an email And that will be during one of their regular sessions, probably held here, just like the last one we had.
Like at 5 o'clock or 5:30?
Yeah, to go over the draft, basically, and then also the recommendation, or not recommendation, the comments that we've received. And then at your January 13th meeting, you'll go over those recommendations for those comments that were received. So
So we're going to meet with the commissioners before we have. our
it's
meeting.
just to go over, if there's any changes, any more to that plan, and also the comments that we've received throughout that 60-day review, so that both boards can hear those comments.
Okay.
We're giving you this update right now in the event that we do not have items for the December Planning Commission agenda. There may be a Merry Christmas coming your way in that regard. So we wanted to make sure that these dates were on your radar and that the public also knew about these dates.
Okay, and just to bring up one other thing, the comments we made last month to Mr. Schultz, that we would have an answer for him this month, we're going to waylay that one more month, correct?
Yes, and in the event that we don't have a meeting, which I just realized this morning that we may not have a meeting, we'll certainly update you and have a progress update through coordination with the Commissioner's office.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, any questions from staff? I mean, from the commission? Okay. Major subdivisions, Whitehall Land Group. Who is it?
Dale?
Or Whitetail Land Group, excuse me. Rob,
Rob
I
Gunter,
was looking for that, couldn't find it.
Rob Gunter, planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning. As you mentioned, we're here for Whitetail Land Group. Today, they are proposing an administrative subdivision to reconfigure parcel 369, lots 16 and 17, as well as parcel 488. And that is so that they can amend an existing major subdivision to create 5 additional lots in that subdivision. The property in question is in Graysonville, just west of Graysonville Cemetery Road. This is an aerial view. You can see there has been a previous major subdivision. I believe 14 buildable lots were created at the time, most of which are built out. The site's in the Graysonville growth area, and it is zoned a Graysonville Planned Residential Neighborhood, or GPRN. So this is a blown-up image of the admin. The dashed blue lines are existing property lines that are proposed to be removed, and the solid blue lines are the new proposed property lines that will allow the, the applicant to create the 5-lot subdivision. And here is the proposed 5-lot subdivision. Just literally, they're going to extend Fawn Lane and build the lots, just as the rest of them were done. It's just a straight extension. In the end, there'll be a total of 19 buildable lots in this neighborhood, as well as several open space lots. So in the GPRN district, unlike many other districts in our zoning code, the Planning Commission actually sets the standards for some of the design in these setbacks, lot sizes, and such. So the previous approval for major subdivision, the Planning Commission decided the setbacks would be a front of 25, side of 8, and rear of 20. This proposal meets those setbacks. The Planning Commission then decided a minimum lot size of 6,000 feet. This proposal is consistent with that as well. A minimum road frontage of 40 feet. Again, they are consistent. What the last Planning Commission did not do was set a maximum height. Staff would recommend that the board set the maximum height today if they're inclined to improve this project, just to eliminate any potential issues that arose in, what's it, Gibson's Grant, where there was a height, and we had to go back and fix some stuff there. So please keep that in mind as we progress.
Is there any height issues down there now?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. Most of the residential zoning districts have a 40-foot height. I would assume that the applicant, and they can speak to this, they're not building 40-foot high houses, so I would imagine they would be okay with that, but in this district, there's no impervious cover limits, there's no landscaping and buffer standards, there is no lighting proposed, and the existing road meets the required public road specs, and the extension will as well. There will be some tree clearing of approximately 1.23 acres to accommodate these new lots. Forest conservation requirements are being met through on and off-site retention for a total of 2.67 acres. The off-site retention is on that parcel 488, so it's directly adjacent to the residential subdivision. You can see it on the left-hand side. If you can see my cursor, this is the off-site. The property does contain non-tidal wetlands in this area. It's very minimal disturbance, but the applicant does have a letter of authorization from MDE to authorize them the disturbance to the wetland and the buffer. The GPRN does require 25% open space. Within that 25%, 10% must be active recreation. The applicant meets both of those standards. And lot 10, which is right in the middle of the existing, here is the active recreation lot. And on that lot, there are cornhole boards proposed, bench, picnic table, grill, as well as a pavilion for the residential use. That's my last slide. In the GPRN, the Planning Commission, in order to approve a project, must make 7 specific findings. Those findings are listed under the resolution in your staff report. So should you be inclined to approve the project, you should be in agreement with all 7 of those findings. With that, I'll answer any questions or turn it over to the applicant.
Any questions?
Good morning. Tom Davis with DMS and Associates, working with Jim and Victoria, VJ Ventures. This is an extension, as Rob indicated, of a previously approved major subdivision to create 5 additional lots. Jim and his family bought another piece of property that allowed us to extend the road and reorient the cul-de-sac from the original proposal to be able to front the 5 new lots on the public road. I don't have anything really else to add. The houses will be very similar to what's already been built in there, 2-story. The height issue should not be a problem because they're just 2-story, single-family homes. And Jim, I don't believe, has any objection to the height limitation of 40 foot, which is typical of, as Rob said, of most residential districts in the county. So unless you have specific questions of me about extension of public utilities, the road, or stormwater management, I don't have anything to add. Jim, do you want?
No, just a couple of things. When we and it's a little bit of time. I think this was originally approved, what, five years ago? 6? But during construction is when we purchased this. We were approached by the landowner to purchase this, so we didn't own this at the time. So we had already under construction. So we stopped at the end because the cul-de-sac lot 16 existing was kind of carved out, and we stopped. We built everything out except for 3 lots in there. So just in case we needed extra space or what happened, but we finally got back around to, we want to finish this out because we want to final pave the community because we have customers or people that live in there now, and we want to be able to turn the HOA over to them. So a few years have passed, but only just because we just weren't able to get this done. But yeah, it's going to be very consistent. If anybody's driven down the street, 2-story homes, landscape yards, side yards. I mean, very consistent. So.
Nice looking little community.
Yeah, I mean, this is just really going to add. The issue right now is we have a little bit of a stone turnaround there, which is a little of a problem. So the quicker we get the cul-de-sac done and finish that, so that's really what we're looking for. And Rob did bring up one thing about lights. We do have lights in the community street lights. We work with Delmarva Power and Light to put lights in there, so the lights will be extended down. So.
Any questions from the commission?
I've got a question, Jim, or Tom, whichever is more appropriate to answer, is that it seems a bit like there's some, the open space that you're proposing with disturbance into the buffer, the wetland buffer, and an impervious inside of that buffer. It just seems like it's being shoehorned a bit, and I guess my question is how do you answer to other developments that we've pushed back on who avoid those areas, both the wetland itself and the buffer? Most notably, right down the street at Perry's Retreat, we've had conversations. They're in critical area as well as wetlands, and they have avoided those altogether. And I just want to make the level as possible, the playing field, and want to know how you'd respond to that concern.
The impacts to the wetland are primarily related to the outfall of our stormwater management systems. So if you go back to the previous slide, Rob, if you look there on lot 22, the wetlands, the largest chunk of wetlands is right in there. So we did not impact that at all. The impacts to our wetlands are related to there's a ditch that kind of runs through the property to the north there. So our outfall for stormwater impacts those wetlands. So we did not impact any wetlands with respect to lot construction or home construction. And the MDE would have pushed back on us if we had proposed that. So this acquisition of this additional property actually allowed us to flip the cul-de-sac to the north side of the road and allowed us to, not impact the wetlands and the buffer. So the only impacts to the wetlands and buffer are related to our stormwater systems.
I'm specifically, Mr. Davis, about the open space lot 10. Can you go back that? Yeah.
Yeah, that permit was issued with the original application. And we subsequently obtained a permit for an adjustment to lot 11 because we had administrative lot line adjustment for lot 11. So that permit was previously issued when the original subdivision was done. And that property's already been cleared and it's ready for construction of
Lot 10.
Lot 10, yes. But we did a lot line adjustment on lot 11 that impacted a little bit of the buffer. You see the back corner there?
Right.
There's a
And
small
I think
piece.
that house is actually offset from the main line of, I think, also
Yeah,
probably
it's-
toward the street.
Yeah.
It looks.
So, but this permit application that Rob referred to is related to the new stormwater system required to serve these new 5 lots and the road extension of Fawn Lane. But a permit was previously issued for the buffer impacts to allow that rec area to be constructed as like.
And am I to presume that split rail fence is essentially a wetland delineation line then, because it's a little bit crooked there?
Yeah,
All right.
yes, yeah, that's the non-tidal wetland field delineated approved MDE wetland line, yes.
Okay. So that'll be that's the limit of disturbance once construction, if it is approved, moves forward, right? There's nothing south of that line.
The rec area had previously been approved, so these lots 9, 10, and 11 and the rec area were previously approved. We're modifying the rec area. I think we took something out of it that was previously approved, or I can't remember. But the rec area and the forest on that lot have already been cleared.
So it's drainage to the south then?
It drains down into the wetlands.
Right,
and
right.
And the runoff then drains down through.
Then at the cul-de-sac, it goes more to the west, which is what you just outlined.
Goes to the
those
west and then
undisturbed
it goes
portions.
south. It ends up in Greenwood Creek is where this drainage ultimately ends up.
Thank you.
We'll probably more than likely not build a fence that crooked
Exactly.
because it'll be straight. It's not there now, but it's really just, it's a grass. We cut the grass now and I think the mowers just kind of cut it rectangular. So we don't really, we just want to put the fence up so that kids don't get back there, into the area. But, yeah, it's not going to be that zag. That would be a problem, but.
That's all. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Can I get a motion? Oh, public comment. I always forget public comment. Any public comment? Looks like none. Okay, now, can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, make a motion that it be resolved that the Planning Commission regarding the request by Whitetail Land Group for preliminary major subdivision approval to administratively reconfigure parcel 369, lots 16 and 17, and parcel 488 in order to create 5 additional planned residential development lots located along Fawn Lane in Graysonville, and as more particularly described in Department of Planning and Zoning file sub 05-18-05-0007, hereby finds the proposed development conforms to all applicable regulations contained in Chapter 18, and the proposed development conforms to the Graysonville Community Plan. The proposed development will not adversely impact public services and facilities for the area. The proposed development, in conjunction with existing and reasonably anticipated development in the surrounding neighborhood, will meet the adequate public facilities standards with regard to traffic. The proposed development will minimize negative environmental impacts and reasonably protect environmentally sensitive areas of the site. The proposed development is designed to be compatible with existing development in the surrounding neighborhood. And the proposed development contains open space and recreation facilities designed to serve the needs of the development. And hereby grants preliminary subdivision approval with the following conditions: that any remaining edits and/or documents required by a reviewing agency are reviewed and approved with the final subdivision review.
Second.
Okay, I have a question. Where are we adjusting the height?
Condition, you could add a second condition that the height be no more than 40 feet or 30 or 45.
That's in part of the Graysonville Community Plan?
It's,
Was it-
no, you would set condition number 2 with the, set the
Okay.
maximum height for this subdivision
We need
as,
to amend them.
Is that part of this motion, or is that a separate?
No, it's part of this one.
for this one, I would imagine, all
Okay.
part of one.
All right, so Madam Chair, what I'd like to add is that the height restriction or design standards and the height restriction of this project not exceed 40 feet.
Second.
Any comments, any questions? There being none, let's call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Everybody have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
You too.
What time should we show up?
So the next one is Fallen Horse Circle, GSH Slippery Hill, LLC. Steve Johnson, County Planner.
Morning, Steve Johnson, County Planner with the Planning Office. As Ms. Dobson spoke about, we're here to discuss Slippery Hill Mixed-Use Development Phases 2 and 3. The applicant is proposing to amend major site plan number 05-18-04-006 for Phases 2 and 3, which will include 120 residential units, which are comprised of 66 townhome-style units, apartments, and 54 age-restricted apartments. The applicant's requesting amended major site plan approval and a parking reduction of 11 spaces. As you can see, this project has quite the history. Of note, the May 12th, 2021 amended conditional use approval increased the multifamily component of this development by 1 additional unit for a total of 120 residential units to be constructed during phases 2 and 3. This map gives you a little bit of an idea where the project's located. It's located to the west of Nesbitt Road and the University of Maryland Medical Pavilion. This is an outline of the parcel. The boundaries are shown in red. To the top right of your screen, you can see the medical pavilion there. And you can sort of see the outline of the development there in the center of the parcel. Property zoned GGMC, which is Graysonville Gateway Medical Center. This is a permitted use in that zoning district. It's also located in the Graysonville growth area. There are woodlands and non-tidal wetlands on the property. The non-tidal wetlands are shown in the green there. There is no proposed disturbance to these features. Forest conservation was addressed with phase 1, where 8.5 acres of woodlands were placed in forest conservation, long-term protection. Everything you see in yellow is Phase 1, which is complete. That consists of 66 residential units and 11,549 square feet of non-residential floor area. Phases 2 and 3 are shown here on this slide in color and also labeled. Phase 2 is sort of towards the bottom. Phase 3 is at the top there. Phase 2 consists of 66 residential style townhome apartments. Phase 3 is 54 age-restricted senior apartments. There's a total of 120 residential units proposed. As a note, there is a future phase to be completed down the road. That's on the right side of your screen in Building K there. That'll consist of a 4,800 square foot commercial building. When complete, all the phases will contain 186 residential units and 16,349 square feet of non-residential space. The total parking required for this project is 364 spaces. 353 have been provided. The applicant is requesting a waiver of 11 residential spaces. And your packets included a justification letter with data that supports the applicant's request. A couple renderings of the buildings. The top is the proposed age restricted apartments. The bottom is the townhome style apartments. These are consistent in design and height with what's already been built on the property. Pictures of the existing structures that have already been built. These are the commercial apartments and first floor non-residential structures. There's another view here. And this is a view of the townhome style apartments. Same with this slide as well. And that's my last slide. So with that, I'll take any questions or turn it over to the applicant.
Question? You know, when the county sets up the number of parking spots for apartments, that's been pretty consistent over the years. And we periodically see these requests to see the number of spaces changed and reduced. Is the county contemplating that it's going to change the requirement instead of it being brought to us to continue to look at the reduction, or where did you come up with, let's say, the number of spaces that you say should be there versus the request to reduce that number?
We're pulling it directly out of the code. I'm not sure if there's going to be any changes with the requirements.
Those numbers come from, what's the name of that book that is used?
The Randall Aaron book?
Yeah, there's a book, or books that are often referred to in picking the number of parking spaces for discrete uses. I think if you looked at any number of zoning codes, you'd find essentially very consistent spaces per whatever the use is. Now, sometimes, you know, that would be based upon, I suppose, national averages. I don't know how old those books and guides are. I think we found over the years that oftentimes it's overparked, and occasionally there's underparked. It's underparked.
I guess my question is, I mean, granting the reduction of 11 spaces and permitting increased, units, what I wrestle with is, if the rule was a rule, and I can appreciate the other locations having, justification for maybe not using all the spaces, but things change. And when things change and you don't have adequate parking, then you still have a problem with where they're going. So I just want to hear from the county as to, your sense of that, potentially occurring. I mean, we got the letter based upon, their past experience with other properties. But I've seen other apartment complexes where they don't have adequate parking, and they followed the book and the guidelines. So what do we think here?
I think that's why it's important that we bring these reductions to you, because a rule is a rule, but you guys can determine the necessity for a reduction. In this case, perhaps it is necessary with limited incomes of these residents, perhaps they don't own 2 cars for a 2-bedroom apartment. There's a commercial component. They swap parking spaces, so those folks may only be there from 8 to 5. And then after 5 o'clock, when somebody who comes home from work can use that same space. But we feel it's important to bring it to the board to decide the applicability of a reduction in parking spaces. We set the standard with the code, but any reduction, we don't want to make that decision. We feel it's best that you guys make that decision, because you're right, things do change, and it needs a higher approval than us.
Thank you.
I think that'll bring it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think to that point, I mean, there's another component here of our MS4, our stormwater permit, that every acre, let's say, that we pave, we have to compensate and offset with trees and open space and non-pervious coverage. So I, for one, am a big fan of the reduction in parking spaces. I think this property, as Steve showed, has some sensitive areas and some woodlands, and they've certainly done their homework. And it's going to cost them money to pave it. And it's going to cost us more money to then treat and offset that in our permit. So I think I'd love to see more of these reductions, quite honestly, come our way for various reasons. But I also agree with council that sometimes that calculus is off based on on any number of factors. So I, for one, don't have a problem at all, especially if the applicant's going to be the one that answers the phone when there's not enough parking.
Which I think brings to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Barry Griffith, Lane Engineering. I'm here with Tom Aid from Green Street Housing. Also have with me today Julie Carroll from Lane Engineering, who is one of the key design people on this project, and Matt Auke is here, who is head of construction for Green Street, if you have any questions for them later. Just want to start out by saying that this project started way back in 2013 as a mixed-use residential commercial project, so it's been around a long time, as Steve has said. But the more recent history for this project and what you see on the ground today occurred in 2018, when the Planning Commission approved a concept plan that showed all of these phases, essentially the same as they are today and what we're proposing with phases 2 and 3. And then granted final site plan approval to phase 1, where we again showed these future phases 2 and 3. We actually did a lot of the preliminary engineering for phases 2 and 3 when we did phase 1 to make sure it would all work. With this approval, this project can be built out as you all have previously seen and approved it. And with this project, the only remaining component of the property that would be left for development is that commercial pad that Steve pointed out in the southeast corner of the property. Phase 1 has been built. It's, as Tom will maybe attest to in a moment, completely occupied residentially. There's an incredibly strong demand and limited supply for workforce and affordable housing. The commercial space is there. That's being difficult to lease, but it's there and built. There's 3 of those townhome apartment buildings in place, and the mixed-use building with the commercial apartments and the commercial, about 10,000 square feet. All the required sidewalks have been installed. There's a walking trail through the woodlands that's been built and is maintained with a small picnic area. Actually, the area of phase 2 and 3 has already been mass graded and is, been ready for the proposed development. All of the stormwater features, ESD, submerged gravel wetlands, bioswales, pervious pavers are all installed. They're functioning well. County's accepted the as-built. Those features will be supplemented in phase 2. The architecture design, as Steve indicated, is proposed to be very similar to what you see today. The landscaping, as required, has all been installed and will continue through phases 2 and 3. To the parking waiver, I do intend to speak to that. The zoning calculations are based on sort of some gross numbers. If you have a one-bedroom apartment, you need 1 space per unit. If you have a 2-bedroom apartment, you need 1.5. It doesn't matter if it's a workforce housing or if it's senior housing. It's just sort of a gross standard. And it's typical for a lot of jurisdictions to have those type of gross standards. I would differ with Chris a little bit in that if you do go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, while they may generally be in the same range in terms of requirements, one jurisdiction will often have a slightly different standard for whatever the use is than another. And that evolves over time through practice and experience in that jurisdiction. And sometimes those types of standards are amended. But most jurisdictions also have a provision for the Planning Commission to have some flexibility in looking at that parking requirement because of the exact things that you brought up, Mr. Ebersberger, that, you know, there are different situations where this may be overparked, this may be underparked. So there, typically you'll find in codes this sort of discretions for the Planning Commission to issue waivers or even require more parking than the standards if the case, if that specific development would need to have that. So this site was designed within the constraints of the limits of forest conservation and woodland clearing, and it was laid out in a way to be as compliant as possible with the county planning requirements per code. However, when we go from concept plan to final engineering, we get into the details and we find we need a little more room in this particular bay because we have some handicap spaces. So we need those areas that are set aside for the people to make easy ingress and egress. So we lose a little room there. And we also have some grading issues to make sidewalks and pathways ADA compliant, and that requires some adjustments. And at the end of the day, we're approximately 11 spaces short of the code requirement. So your code, though, does have a specific provision to allow for you to make this waiver, provided we give you the information and you agree with us. Senior apartment tenants do not generate as much of a parking demand as other types of non-age restricted or family and affordable workplace tenants. The code for our senior apartment building requires 85 spaces for 46 one-bedroom and 8 two-bedroom. Green Street, and through their management company, did a survey, which you have a copy of actual cars in projects at 3 different times during the day to kind of get a sense of what the ratio really is to the number of cars to the number of occupied vehicles. And that's what that letter shows. And for a senior apartment, what we find is that the average is 0.58 cars per unit, as opposed to, say, the code requirement for a one-bedroom unit, with a high count at 0.83 cars per unit and a low count of 0.38. So if we take the high count and apply it to our project, our parking requirement would really only be about 45 spaces, okay? So with understanding, we do want to try to be as compliant with the code as possible. We've got what we've got. We are only asking for a waiver of 11 spaces, and we are very confident that based on actual needs, we will have adequate parking here. So we respectfully request that waiver of 11 spaces.
This is Tom Aid. One thing I'd add to the senior building is that it also is a restriction at 62 and over, not a 55 and over, that the code uses for the age restriction. So it's further restricted by program use.
The Phase 3 building is
the Phase 3 building.
But just to elaborate a little bit more on what is in Phase 2, we have 5 more of the townhome apartments, the 1 senior building. There's a second playground that's going to be added. We're going to complete the internal pedestrian loop and fire access, and that's all with pervious pavers. We have a tenant services and a fitness center in one of the buildings. We're using pervious pavers for all of the actual parking spaces in this phase, similar to what you see here at this county building. And this will just be a continuation of what we've already seen there. So phase 1 has been built as approved. It's doing well. Phase 2 will be a continuation of
Doing
that.
well, except for the commercial.
For the commercial. So Tom, I know maybe you would like to speak a little bit about how the project's going and the demand for it in the community.
Yes, thank you all. We completed construction in the fall, and I think the fall. It's been a while. Okay, so the important part of the facts are that we were fully leased within 30 days of certificate of occupancy for all 66 units. Wow. So we had an incredible demand. And that lease up occurred during the height of, kind of the newness of COVID and what we were living within and introducing into our communities. So the demand is high. As I understand, there's a strong wait list. There's a lot. The majority of the residents are either previously living and or working in the county. So we didn't do any marketing at all for the project outside of the area, so there was no attraction from our perspective or marketing efforts to bring folks from other areas to the community. We expect to have the same result with the lease up of the next 2 phases.
Yeah.
Let's say one final thing, and happy to answer any questions. There are no non-tidal wetland or tidal or non-tidal buffer impacts with the project. I know the one graphic that Steve showed seemed to indicate that the wetlands were on the site, but I think that's a generalized DNR mapping versus the actual delineations we use.
And I don't want to beat the drum too hard on parking, but this letter, these are similar type projects as far as the mix of senior housing and.
Yeah, the senior housing has the same age restricted for affordable residents, and
so we're comparing comparable complexes to comparable complexes.
yes, everything on there is an income and or age restricted apartment.
That's fine.
Hey, do we have any questions?
Madam Chair, I do have a question for the applicant. If I recall correctly, I do believe that they were supposed to install a nature trail through that property. Has that been installed? I didn't see it on the displays that were presented.
It is installed and it's maintained.
It was part of phase 1 approval.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, any other questions? Can we get a motion? Oh, wait a minute, public comment. Any public comment? I suspect not. Okay, so now can I get a motion?
Okay, Madam Chair, first motion is with regard to the parking reduction. Be it resolved that the Planning Commission regarding the request by GSH Slippery Hill LLC for a parking reduction from 364 required parking spaces to 353 provided spaces, as more particularly described in Planning and Zoning File SP number 21-06-0077, hereby finds that the applicant has provided sufficient evidence warranting reduced parking requirements, and the proposed number of parking spaces shown in the amended major site plan is sufficient, as residential parking needs are generally less in affordable housing projects, and hereby grants the requested parking reduction.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Okay, and then can we get one for the amended major site plan?
Yes. Second motion regarding the amended major site plan, be it resolved that the planning commission regarding the request by GSH Slippery Hill LLC for a proposed amended major site plan identified as Slippery Hill Mixed-Use Development, Phases 2 and 3, to construct a total of 120 multifamily units, 66 townhome-style apartments, and 54 age-restricted apartments, as more particularly described in the Department of Planning and Zoning File SP number 21-06-0077, hereby finds this amended major site plan is consistent with the purpose, goals, and objectives of the 2010 Comprehensive Plan and the Queen Anne's County Zoning and Subdivision Regulation, and hereby grants amended major site plan approval subject to the following conditions: that any remaining edits and/or documents required by planning and zoning be reviewed and approved. The applicant submits an amended major site plan for final review, and that all required signatures must be obtained.
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? Let's call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so moved. Says we call for a break, but I think we can bypass that. Next thing on the agenda is public comments. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you all. Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
You too.
Are there any public comments today? Well, then I'm looking for my favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.